Captain Zara Voss stood before the expansive observation window of her flagship, the ESS Orion, gazing out at the swirling aurora of hyperspace. Her sharp blue eyes held a pensive look as she mentally prepared for the momentous occasion ahead, the 47th Galactic Summit. As the first human captain to lead Earth's delegation at the summit, the weight of responsibility lay heavy on Zora's shoulders. In the 5 short decades since humanity had burst onto the galactic stage, Earth had rapidly risen as a technological and economic power. However, this ascent had bred as much suspicion and rivalry as it had cooperation. Some of the older spacefaring species viewed humans as brash upstarts upsetting the established order. Others saw Earth as a valuable ally and trading partner. The summit would be a crucial arena for winning friends and assuaging doubts. A chime from her wristcom pulled Zara out of her musings. "Captain, we're approaching the Concordance station. Real space reversion in 15 minutes. Thank you, Ilara. I'll be on the bridge shortly." Zara took a final moment to gather her thoughts before striding out of her quarters. As she walked the polished halls of the Orion, she couldn't help but marvel at how far her world had come. The sleek, powerful vessel around her, the efficient crew who snapped smart salutes as she passed, all of it testament to the indomitable human spirit that had taken them to the stars. Stepping onto the bridge, Zara settled into the command chair. "Helm, bring us out of hyperspace. Comms, open a channel to station control and transmit our credentials. XO, you have the con. I'll be in the diplomatic bay prepping for departure." A chorus of acknowledgments followed her as Zara headed to the airlock. The Orion smoothly dropped into real space on the fringes of the massive structure housing the summit. Hundreds of ships of myriad designs crowded the surrounding space, a kaleidoscope of worlds and cultures gathered in the spirit of cooperation. At least on the surface. Zara had barely finished donning her ceremonial uniform when the airlock light cycled to green, indicating a hard seal with the station's docking hub. She took a deep breath, then stepped forward as the doors whisked open. An honor guard of the Galactic Concordance, resplendent in ornate armor, awaited her in the reception hall. Captain Zara Voss of the Earth Space Fleet, a melodious voice intoned, emanating from one of the guards. "In the name of the Concordance, I bid you welcome to the Galactic Summit." Zara bowed her head in the formal gesture of greeting. "My thanks, honored Sentinel. I come bearing the goodwill of Earth and eagerness to join our galactic brethren in this noble assembly." The pleasantries completed, Zara fell into step behind the escort as they marched into the heart of the station. The vaulted halls echoed with dozens of languages and hundreds of feet, the air electric with the buzz of conversation and the gravity of decisions to be made. Zara caught snippets of hushed speculation as she passed. "The humans have designs on the Argon Reach. Captain Voss brokered the Altair Accords. She's one to watch. Earth can't be trusted with a council seat." Zara held her head high against the swirling currents of diplomacy and intrigue. She knew many of the established powers were wary of humanity's meteoric rise, but she also knew that more than a few species looked to Earth as a beacon of hope and change in a galaxy too long dominated by the calcified old guard. Entering the cavernous main chamber of the summit, Zora marveled at the soaring arches and shimmering holobanners displaying the sigils of 100 worlds. At the center, a towering hologram of the Concordance flame rotated serenely, symbolizing the unity and peace all present aspired to. Zara found her place among the tiered rings of delegation pods and settled in. As the 47th Galactic Summit comes to order, let us commence our labors with a moment of contemplation. The Concordance speaker intoned from the central podium. Zara bowed her head along with the assembled dignitaries, though her mind raced with strategies for the discussions ahead. Humanity would have a voice among the stars, Zara silently vowed. A voice for progress, for justice, for a future where Earth stood tall among the great civilizations of the galaxy. But achieving that bright promise would take every ounce of skill and determination she and her world could muster. The Galactic Summit had begun, and with it, humanity's bid for a larger destiny. In the hours to come, Captain Zora Voss would need to navigate perilous currents of diplomacy and rivalry, forging alliances and parrying threats that could seal Earth's fate. But for the moment, as the speaker launched into the formal invocations, Zora allowed herself a fleeting instant of awe and pride. Her people had risen from their birth cradle to walk among the stars, and Zora would be damned before she let any force in the universe shackle that audacious spirit now that it had been set free. As the summit adjourned for the day, Captain Zora Voss found herself no closer to securing humanity's desired council seat. The established powers, led by the imperious Zor Imperium and the calculating Thralki hegemony, had stonewalled her at every turn. Exhausted but determined, Zora made her way to a secluded observation lounge to gather her thoughts. Lost in strategies and counterarguments, she barely noticed when another figure entered the lounge. It was only when a resonant voice spoke that Zora snapped out of her reverie. "Captain Voss, I hope I'm not intruding." Zora turned to see a tall, lithe figure silhouetted against the stars. As the beam stepped into the light, she recognized him as Kolek, a senior diplomat of the Veld, a species humanity had tangled with in the early days of their expansion. "Not at all, Ambassador Kolek. I was just contemplating our progress, or lack thereof." Kolek's angular features arranged into what Zora had come to recognize as a wry smile. The Zor and Thralki do seem determined to keep humanity at arm's length. One might almost suspect they fear what an alliance of our peoples could achieve. Zora raised an eyebrow. "An alliance? I was under the impression the Veld saw us as rivals at best, enemies at worst. Perhaps once. But times change, as do the needs of our civilizations. The Veld have watched humanity's rise with great interest. Your people's dynamism, your innovative spirit, these are qualities we value, qualities the galaxy could use more of." Zora considered this unexpected olive branch. The Veld were a technologically advanced species, known for their cunning diplomacy and clandestine network of informants. Having them on humanity's side could tip the scales. "I'm listening," Zora said carefully. Kolek stepped closer, lowering his voice. "My government has been monitoring reports of a clandestine project, one that could threaten the balance of power in the galaxy. We've traced it to a desolate world in the Argon Reach, but our probes have been impeded. If we could pool our resources, however—" Zora's mind raced. The Argon Reach was an unstable region, riddled with conflict and piracy. If someone was using it as a base for illegal weapons research— "You suspect the Zor or Thralki?" she asked. "Let's just say their recent belligerence and attempts to isolate potential rivals could be more than mere realpolitik. Something is rotten in the stars, Captain Voss. Something that could engulf us all if left unchecked." Zora made a decision. "I'll need to confer with my government. But if your intelligence is correct, Ambassador, then this is bigger than humanity or the Veld. It's about the future of the galaxy." Kolek inclined his head. "I look forward to working with you, Captain. Together, we may yet steer our worlds to a brighter horizon." As the Veld diplomat took his leave, Zora gazed out at the infinite tapestry of stars. An alliance with a former adversary was a gamble, but the stakes were too high to let old rivalries blind her. If there was a threat brewing in the Argon Reach, she had to investigate. The next several days passed in a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and hurried preparations. With the blessing of Earth's leadership, Zora and a hand-picked team boarded a stealthy courier ship and set course for the desolate world Kolek had indicated. As the unnamed planet's rocky surface filled the view screen, Zora felt a twinge of unease. Who or what awaited them below? And would this tenuous pact with the Veld prove humanity's salvation, or a fatal error? Only one way to find out, Zora thought as she checked the charge on her sidearm. "We came to this summit in the name of peace. But if there are shadows gathering at the edge of known space, then let them beware. Humanity is no cowering neophyte, no easy prey. We've carved our place in the stars through boldness and ingenuity, and we'll fight to keep it with every fiber of our being." The courier ship knifed into the atmosphere, carrying Zara and her team into the heart of a mystery that could change the face of the galaxy. In the trials to come, the mettle of both humanity and the Veld would be tested, and the fate of worlds would hang in the balance. The desolate world in the Argon Reach was a forbidding sight. Jagged peaks and yawning chasms scared its surface, a geological hellscape that seemed inimical to life. Yet as Zara and Kolek's team scoured the rocky badlands, they found signs that this hadn't always been so. "Captain Voss, over here," Ensign Rykos called out. The young science officer was kneeling at the base of a towering cliff, brushing centuries of dust from a strange symbol carved into the rock. Zara joined him, her eyes widening as she recognized the angular sigil. "That's progenitor script, but they vanished eons ago." The progenitors, an ancient, hyper-advanced species that had seeded the galaxy with life and technology before disappearing into the mists of prehistory. Their ruins and relics were scattered across 1,000 worlds, tantalizing reminders of a lost golden age. Kolek ran a gloved hand over the symbol, his expression pensive. The Veld have long sought to unravel the progenitors' secrets. If this world holds one of their cages, then whoever is digging here may be after more than just weapons, Zara finished grimly. They followed the trail of sigils deeper into a winding canyon until they reached a gaping cave mouth. Flickering lights and the hum of machinery spilled from within, clear evidence of an active excavation. Zara signaled her team to take cover. She and Kolek edged to the mouth of the cave and peered inside. What they saw stole the breath from their lungs. A vast chamber stretched before them, its walls lined with pulsing conduits and glowing glyphs. At the center, suspended in a crackling energy field, was a massive construct of gleaming metal and swirling light. It was like no technology Zara had ever seen, a symphony of impossible angles and eerie luminescence. "By the ancestors," Kolek breathed. "It's a progenitor nexus, a repository of their most advanced knowledge and creations." Zara's mind reeled at the implications. In the wrong hands, such a trove could upend the balance of power in the galaxy. They had to secure it before. "Intruders, seize them." A harsh voice shattered the air. Zara spun to see a squad of armored figures charging towards them, energy weapons blazing. She and Kolek dove for cover, their own weapons snapping up to return fire. Zara got a glimpse of the attacker's insignia, the snarling wolf's head of the Zor Imperium's Black Talon division. "Looks like we know who's behind this little operation," she called to Kolek over the din of battle. The Veld diplomat was a blur of motion, his lithe form twisting and leaping as he rained fire on their assailants. "We can't let them take the Nexus." Zara knew he was right. The thought of the Zor Imperium wielding progenitor technology was too terrifying to contemplate. They had to get to the construct first. "Rykos Tanis, lay down covering fire," she barked into her comm. "Kolek and I are going for the Nexus." Acknowledgements crackled over the link as Zara and Kolek broke from cover. They dashed towards the glowing heart of the chamber, dodging energy bolts and the screaming riposts of their own weapons. But as they reached the base of the Nexus, a voice cold as the void rang out. "Halt!" Zara looked up to see a looming figure clad in ornate battle armor, a crackling energy blade in each hand. She recognized the elaborate sigils of rank, a Zor Imperial Blade Lord, one of the Imperium's most lethal enforcers. "You squander your species' promise with this meddling, human," the Blade Lord snarled. "The future belongs to the Imperium, as shall the legacy of the progenitors." Zara raised her weapon, knowing it was likely futile. Blade Lords were genetically and cybernetically enhanced to superhuman levels. She would only have one chance. But as the Zor warrior lunged, a searing lance of energy struck him square in the chest. He stumbled, his armor smoking. Zara risked a glance to see Kolek, his weapon raised, a fierce light in his eyes. "The future belongs to those with the vision to forge it," the Veld called out, "not to those who would hoard the past." In the Blade Lord's moment of distraction, Zara leaped. Her powered fist struck the warrior's helm with a clang of metal on metal. As he reeled, she snatched one of the fallen energy blades and brought it slashing down. The Blade Lord collapsed, his armor sundered. Around them, the battle still raged as Zora's team fought to hold back the Zor forces, but Zara's focus was on the pulsing nexus above. Kolak, any idea how we access this thing? The Veld was already working at a shimmering control panel. The progenitor's technology was designed to respond to mental activation, if I can attune it to our neural patterns. Suddenly, the chamber shook with a massive detonation. Chunks of rock rained down from above. Zara cursed. The Zor must have planted charges to bury the site if they were denied their prize. "Whatever you're going to do it fast," she shouted. "This whole place is coming down." Kolak's hands flew over the controls as the nexus pulsed and shimmered. With a final triumphant keystroke, he turned to Zara, a fierce grin on his face. "Got it. The nexus is sensed to us. We have to go. Now." Zara hesitated a split second, looking to where her team was still battling the Zor. Tanis caught her eye, shouting over the comm, "Captain, go. We'll hold them off." With a heavy heart, Zara nodded. She and Kolak leaped into the Nexus's swirling energies, just as another blast shook the chamber. There was a blinding flash, a sensation of hurtling through an infinite expanse. And then darkness claimed her. Zora awoke to the sensation of cold metal beneath her cheek. She blinked, her vision swimming into focus on an unfamiliar ceiling of arching beams and pulsing conduits. Memory crashed over her like a frigid wave. The progenitor site, the battle with the Zor, the desperate leap into the Nexus. "Kolak," she called out, struggling to her feet. Her voice echoed strangely in the cavernous space. "Here, Captain." The Veld's voice was taut, clipped. Zara turned to see him standing at a shimmering console, his back to her, his posture rigid. She crossed to him, peering at the swirling glyphs on the console's surface. "What is this place? Some kind of progenitor command center?" Kolak was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was cold, in a manner of speaking. Suddenly, the chamber hummed to life around them. Screens flared into existence, displaying star charts, technical schematics, fleet dispositions, and at the center of it all, a slowly rotating image of a monstrous construct, a sphere of dark metal bristling with spikes and thrumming with malevolent energy. Zara's blood ran cold. "A void forge," she whispered. "By all the stars, the progenitors actually built one." Void forges were the stuff of dark legend, whispered about in the shadowed corners of seedy spaceport bars. Planet-killing weapons of terrifying power, capable of twisting the very fabric of space-time. The Galactic Concordance had banned even the theoretical research of such devices. She turned to Kolak, a terrible suspicion dawning. "This is what you were after all along, isn't it? Not just progenitor tech, but this specific weapon." Kolak finally turned to face her, his expression a mask of regret and resolve. "I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, Zora, that you would understand the necessity of what must be done." "Necessity?" Zora's voice rose in disbelief and anger. "You manipulated me, used humanity to get to this abomination. For what? Some mad scheme of conquest and domination. For survival." Kolak's shout rang through the chamber. "The Veld are a dying people, Zora. Our homeworld is a poisoned ruin, our colonies dwindling. We needed an equalizer, a way to ensure our place in the galaxy." Zara shook her head, her hand tightening on her weapon. "And you think this is the answer? Becoming what you fear, embracing extinction over coexistence?" Kolak's eyes were pleading, desperate. "It's not that simple. The galaxy is a harsh and unforgiving place. The strong survive, the weak perish. We're just choosing to be strong." "No." Zora's voice was cold and resolute. "You're choosing fear over courage, destruction over diplomacy. I won't let you plunge the galaxy into a nightmare of all-consuming war." Kolak's expression hardened. I was afraid you'd say that. His hand flew to his belt, too fast for Zara to track. An energy pulse struck her like a hammer blow, hurling her across the chamber. She hit the wall hard, her weapon clattering from nerveless fingers, darkness swooning at the edges of her vision. Through the haze of pain, she saw Kolak turn back to the console, his hands racing across the controls. The chamber began to thrum with building power, a deep and ominous resonance. "Kolak, don't do this," Zara ground out, struggling to rise. "You have no idea what forces you're unleashing." The Veld ignored her, his eyes fixed on the redouts, his expression one of exultant fanaticism. "A new age dawns, Zara. The age of the Veld ascendancy. If you cannot embrace it, then you will be left behind with the rest of the galaxy's chaff." Zara staggered to her feet, every muscle screaming in protest. She looked around desperately for a weapon, a tool, anything to stop Kolak's mad plan. Her gaze fell on the schematic still rotating on one of the screens. A desperate idea kindled in her mind, born of equal parts desperation and inspiration. The progenitors were known for safeguarding their creations, installing fail-safes and countermeasures in case their technology fell into the wrong hands. If she could just find the self-destruct mechanism for the forge. Gritting her teeth against the pain, Zara limped to the console, her eyes scanning the alien sigils. There, a pulsing glyph in the corner of the schematic. She had no idea what it said, but something deep in her gut told her it was what she sought. Kolak saw her a split second too late. He whirled, energy pistol rising. But Zara had already lunged, her fist slamming down onto the glyph with all her remaining strength. The chamber shook as if gripped by a titan's hand. Deafening klaxons blared, consoles sparking and flaring with stroding warnings. At the center of it all, the hologram of the Void Forge pulsed once, twice, and then shattered into a million shards of light. "No!" Kolak's anguished cry was barely audible over the building cacophony. "What have you done?" Zara faced him, blood trickling from her lip, her eyes hard as diamonds. "What I had to. What you should have done from the start. Put the good of all before the wants of the few." The chamber bucked and heaved, metal screaming as ancient joinings tore asunder. Zara staggered, fighting to keep her footing on the pitching deck. Kolak had fallen to his knees, his face a mask of despair and fury. "You've doomed us all, human. The Veld will never forgive this betrayal. If there's to be a reckoning, I'll face it," Zara said grimly. "But I won't let you drag the galaxy down with you." With a final convulsive shudder, the progenitor station began to tear itself apart. Gobbets of molten metal and gouts of flame burst from every surface as aeons-old power cells ruptured and overloaded. Zara turned and ran, staggering through the disintegrating labyrinth, the tortured scream of dying metal ringing in her ears. Behind her, Kolak's final howl of rage and anguish echoed above even the destruction's din before it abruptly cut off. And then there was nothing but the roar of flames, the bone-shaking concussions of explosion after explosion, and the all-consuming need to escape, to survive, to live to fight another day. Somehow, through a haze of pain and desperation, Zara found her way back to the courier ship. She all but fell into the pilot's seat, her shaking hands flying across the controls. The tiny craft shook and bucked as it launched itself clear of the dying station, outpacing the expanding sphere of destruction by a hair's breadth. As the blinding flare of the station's final detonation lit the void behind her, Zara slumped back in her seat, her heart hammering, her mind reeling. Kolak's betrayal, the Void Forge, the harrowing escape, it all swirled in a dizzying maelstrom of adrenaline and disbelief. But even as she fought to steady her breathing, a cold realization crystallized in her mind. The Veld had proven themselves an enemy this day, driven by a desperate ruthlessness that threatened the very foundations of galactic peace. And worse, the secrets they had uncovered hinted at even greater threats lurking in the forgotten corners of the galaxy, waiting to be unleashed by the unscrupulous or the unknowing. The stakes of the game had just been raised to a terrifying new height, and Zara knew with grim certainty that this was only the beginning. Whatever trials lay ahead, whatever foes she would face, she would meet them head-on with all the courage and resolve humanity could muster. For she was a child of Earth, an inheritor of the indomitable spirit that had carried her species to the stars and beyond. And she would not rest until those stars were safe for all who call them home.